Back to Jeff Kenyan live here at Citizen Studios. The story that simply will not go away. GMOs, folks, GMOs. Joining us live in the studios, Professor Richard Adwar. He's a registrar research at Kenyatta University and chairman of Kubiko. Also in the studios, Emmanuel Atamba is the coordinator for an outfit known as Route to Food. And joining us back here on Zoom live from Naivasha, Dr. Roy Mugira. He's the CEO of National Biosafety Authority. Gentlemen, welcome all to the show. We're going to have a good debate. Before we start it, let's hear what Cabinet Secretary for Trade Moses Kuria had to say last week about GMOs. Take a listen.
Government of Kenya, we cannot hide our heads in the sand anymore. We have taken two deliberate steps. One is that we have so many things that can kill us in this country. Being in this country, you are a candidate for death. And because there's so many things competing for death, there's nothing wrong with adding GMO to that list. That is why we have deliberately decided to allow GMOs into this country. And the second thing is, until we are satisfied that we have enough maize in this country, our staple food. Tomorrow I'm signing a gazette notice to allow for importation of up to 10 million bags of maize, duty-free, for the next 6 months until we achieve food security. Because that is our cardinal responsibility as government. I know this may offend some people, both from a GMO and from importation, but I will do this, and we'll do this as government. Even if it's not, we lose some votes here and there, but at least we'll see the kingdom of heaven.
Professor Adwar, I saw you shaking your head during. Prof, what do you say?
Just thanks, Jeff, for inviting me again. I think I will just say that there was a moment of comedy. And it was within that context. I still feel that probably it was taken out of the joke that was not well probably executed with the audience, particularly in terms of the current mood. But from where I sit, I think I picked the beat around food security, which is very critical. I think he talked about it. And he has also talked about importation up to 10 million. You hear people say it is 10 million. Up to means it can even be 500,000 tons. So it is a debate that is still very live. Of course, the mention of death really, touches people in different ways. And it's just sad that death and GMO and importation and all this were mixed in a single, discussion. And therefore, we would get interpretations that are very different. And I've seen a lot of that out here. What I think I would build from that bit is the resolve by the government to ensure that there is food security in the country. And to that extent, I think the government has a responsibility really to feed its people.
Sure. Emmanuel, let me ask you your reaction when you heard CS Moses Kuria say that.
Yeah, I think I would not say it is a joke, as Dr. is saying. I mean, Honorable Moses Kuria is one of the smartest people in this country, because the cabinet has only 21 people and he's one of them. And the professor is not in the cabinet. So definitely Moses Kuria knows what he's saying. And how he said it might be incorrect. But what Moses Kuria is saying is, for example, already alluded to in the National Biosafety Act of 2009, in the objects where it talks about the potential risks of GMOs to human health and to the environment. And some of the potential risks are exactly what Waziri is talking about, that this is something that can potentially harm people, that can potentially affect their health, potentially. Because technology is technology. The same way you use an iron box to iron your shirt, it is the same iron box that is going to burn your shirt. It is not your neighbor's iron box. Technology is technology. And technology is prone to failure. Technology is prone to malfunctioning. And I think what Honorable Moses Kuria is saying is basically what a lot of Kenyans are saying. And the question that Kenyans are asking themselves today, is it worth the risk? Are we in a situation where we can say that if we do not accommodate this risk that GMOs pose to our health, that we are going to die tomorrow of hunger? And the reason that we have the current crisis, is it because we don't have GMOs or it's because of other reasons? So these are the questions that Kenyans are grappling with. Yeah. And Waziri is right to put it out that, potentially this is something that we can add to the list of some of the things that can kill you. So I would not correct him because he has not also corrected himself. I mean, if he was wrong or if it was a joke, he would have come out and corrected it. Again, to the question of importing to address food security, I mean, we have talked about this years and years. We have said clearly that our food security problem is not a food production problem. It is not, and it can never be. And that is why even now, when he's talking about importation, we have leaders from the North Rift who are saying, no, wait, can we buy what is there available? So which country is Honorable Moses Kuria talking about importation for? Yet there are other people, other leaders in the same government who feel like it is not necessary.
In fact, you were saying earlier on that we're supposed to produce, what, 40 million bags?
Exactly. So we produce about 45 million bags annually. But because of the challenges that farmers had with access to fertilizer and the cost of fertilizer going up, that production has gone down. I saw Honorable Moses Kuria estimating it at 35 million. The other guys who have estimated it at 40 million. So it is within that range, 35 million to 40 million bags. This is what farmers in the North Rift are harvesting now. I was in Eldoret over the weekend. Maize is being harvested now in this country. So when you talk about importing and versus what that is going to do to the local production, because yes, you need to import to address the deficit that is there. And the deficit in terms of actually what is required for human consumption is about 10 million bags, not more than that. Plus, let's remember that people, especially in urban areas in Nairobi, are moving away from depending on maize slowly, gradually, to adopting things like rice and wheat and potatoes as other sources of starch. So it's not like we are stuck with this maize debate. Things are gradually changing, and therefore even the consumption patterns are changing with time. Yeah. So, and importing is not the solution, definitely. Importing is a short-term solution to meet the deficit in the market. Okay, let me go to Dr. Roy Mugira. You can hear me, Dr. Roy. You're in charge of biosafety. There is a ship that docked into Mombasa from Maputo the last couple of days, carrying a lot of maize. People are asking whether that is GM maize.
Thank you, Jeff. Just to pick up quickly from where Emmanuel and Prof has left it, I like the use of the word potentially by Emmanuel, an illustration that that is potential. I mean, it exists as potential. And thank you, Jeff, for having me again on the bench. I would potentially be seated between the two gentlemen, given that I am a regulator. So take my seat is between Professor and Emmanuel. And basically my role is to ensure that Professor doesn't go rogue and do stuff that is not okay. And on this other hand, ensure that, assure Emmanuel and other public people, Kenyans, that this commodity that we have checked is safe and give the assurance. So niko katikati hapo, Jeff, but even as I say that, I want to confirm to you and to the public and to Kenyans that the ship that has been reported to have docked in Mombasa has its origins from the port of Maputo. It is indeed bringing in white maize that has been procured by the World Food Program for purposes of emergency food relief. So this is not a trading kind of commodity, and it isn't GMO. We have verified, we have a certificate of GMO-free from cargo that has come in through. Any process that will bring in GM maize will require our approval because, as I explained previously, Jeff, our role is not only to implement a national legislation, we implement an international protocol called the Cartagena Protocol, which Kenya is a state party. And that protocol is anchored on this United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity. So we not only need to conform as Kenya within Kenya, but also to conform with our international obligations. And therefore, any import, any material coming in for relief purposes, for processing, for use as food, for any potential cultivation must have a clearance by ourselves as the national competent authority. The instrument that Waziri spoke about, if that will be prepared or the process is on, then we would be participating in that to ensure that the provisions of such an instrument or such a notice is in conformity with the Biosafety Act and the regulations and our commitment to the Cartagena Protocol.
All right, stand by, Dr. Mugira. Stand by. Let me go to Professor Oduor and ask you, this whole debate on GMOs, do you think it was shoved down people's throats, without them knowing? You think it was forced on people and not enough public participation was done?
Jeff, clever monkeys do not hang on a single branch for one single reason, that their weight will overwhelm that single branch and they will all crash and die. The government also has a strategy that cannot rely on a single approach to feed this nation. It started with subsidizing fertilizer, for instance. The government is talking deep and heavy on irrigation and many dams popping up. That's a good move. The government is talking about optimizing production value chains so that there is good flow of stuff. Those things are still happening. Now, if you have dams happening for irrigation, and you have systems, meaning that the farmers can harvest their produce and quickly get them to the market, particularly those that are perishable, you are doing something. But if you have water and you are irrigating, but you have seeds that are susceptible to pests, then even with all that water, still you will struggle to get sufficient yield. That is natural. So what has just been done with this GMO story is that we are now bringing in seeds that are insect protected, for instance. So that as you do irrigation, as you subsidize fertilizer, as you do all these things, optimization of the value chains and all those things, you also still have seeds that are protected against insects. That is the multi-pronged, approach that the government is using. I personally disagree with people who say that GMO is a solution. It's not, and we've never claimed that GMO is a silver bullet. And I don't know where it's coming from. Probably if some scientist mentioned it, we probably might apologize on their behalf. The fact is, GMO is part of the solution that other solutions, like Emmanuel will tell you, in terms of production that he keeps talking about, that there is enough food and probably the problem is distribution. Then I keep asking them, then who banned distribution? Distribution is open. Why are we not distributing? And we are not coming here to bring GMO to say, now we have brought GMO, don't distribute. Because GMO maize will not harvest itself, Jeff, and it won't take itself to the posho mill to be crushed into flour. It will have to be harvested, carried in the value chain, and therefore we are saying, go ahead, add fertilizer. Because unless you make GMO that it doesn't require fertilizers, it will still require the fertilizer. It will still require water. What I think is very unfortunate, and how I wish that this ban was lifted at a point when we had enough food, so that people are not linking, one, the importation with the fact that there are people who are, accusing the hunger as a reason for importation, and therefore we want to kill our people who are already dying out of hunger. The thing is, Jeff, importing maize when the harvest is near for, say, North Reef, like Emmanuel is saying, whether that maize was organic would still trigger the same discussion we are having. Because at that particular point, it is no longer a GMO debate. It is about, I have my local farmers vis-a-vis importation, and it becomes some discussion that is no longer GMO. So at this point in time, even if the importation was for organic maize, we will still get the discussion we are having now. So I would really urge the public not to confuse the importation and the timeliness, the synchrony that is happening, that there is importation and there is harvesting probably from North Rift, to mean that that's the reason why GMO is bad. Otherwise, we are confusing that. We need to appreciate that the GMO should be discussed independently and discussing deeply the merits. Okay, gentlemen, I'd like you all to listen to a couple of sound bites. One from Bishop Muheria. Oh, yes. He came out the other day, very outspoken on behalf of the church. Let's take a listen to that.
It's a serious matter that deserves discussion, deep, sober engagement. We understand we may need for a momentary relief to go towards embracing the feeding of our people with food that may be in fact GMO. But that's not the solution. We need to address the deep-seated issues.
Cannot just give something like that without proper scientific research. The question which arises, who did the scientific research about GMO? Where was it done? Where was it public participation? What is it?
Okay, that's the church's position. Now let's listen to ordinary Mwananchi. People in the streets, what are their thoughts about GMO?
Tumeambiwa na mabishop wetu wa makanisa, tumeambiwa na viongozi wetu wa kisiasa kwamba hawakubaliani kwamba hii si GMO inasaleta ugonjwa mingi sana katika binadamu. Na vile mimi naye nimefanya utafiti yangu kwamba hii GMO mainji mingi sana kule uzunguni wameikataa.
Defect yake hatujui ni nini. Kwa vile wametuharakishia hatujui tunaelekea wapi. Tulikuwa tunatarajia tuendelee kukula mahindi yetu ya nyumbani ya kawaida. Tutakuwa na side effect, tutakubali kupanda. Na kama kutakuwa na side effect, tunakataa.
Jambo ambalo litaleta athari kubwa kando kabisa na masuala ya afya na kiuchumi, lakini pia kwa wale wakulima ambao ukulima katika nchi yetu hii ni uti wa mgongo wa uchumi wetu.
Dr. Roy Mugira, you're the Biosafety Authority. People here have no clue what GMO is, or you know, the church is saying there are deep-seated issues with GMO. What's going on?
Yes, Jeff, that is what you can see and hear from the streets, and the levels of public awareness and public education on this particular subject has been for a long time negatively influenced by negative reporting and deliberate misinformation. If you go to the internet right now and simply Google GMO, you will find very absurd, very shocking kind of information. And this is what our public is feeding on. What this reflects, Jeff, is a challenge that we want to take head on, that indeed the levels of public awareness and public education among ordinary street person walking around the streets, among even some technical levels, you will see quite levels of low public education and awareness. And that is one of the roles that we play in facilitating public education. What we have done is to make an appeal for an enhanced facilitation to be able to go down to conduct public education. And one thing, the strategy that has been taken by the Kwanza government and is the relocation of the National Biosafety Authority from the parent Ministry of Education to the Ministry of Agriculture under the State Department of Crop Development. This has been done through the executive order that was issued by His Excellency the President. One thing that we see that is of importance or relevance or an advantage in that move is giving us the relevance within the Crop Development State Department. We consider that GMO or genetic modification is a technology. When we did the law, the Biosafety Act, we perceived this as a product of a technology. And therefore, we domiciled the responsibility of biosafety with the cabinet secretary responsible for science and technology, which has traditionally been domiciled in education.
Okay,
now,
hold that thought, Dr. Roy, hold that thought. Let me ask Emmanuel Atamba here. When you hear people, I mean, I don't know if it's ignorance or it's lack of education or lack of public participation, but there's a lot of people who are scared over this thing, huh?
Yeah.
A lot of people.
And the people must be scared for a reason. You know, when you walk around, even if you just walk around in a village where there are no professors, and people start running around, Jeff, you'll run. You don't need a professor to tell you this is a snake that can bite you. You don't need, the government to come and educate you. So people normally are able to have instincts around issues. And instincts are very important. And you see, when a consumer is uncomfortable about something, I was telling someone, I mean, it's something simple. Maybe you go to a party and, the way the food is served to you, the food has nothing in it that can harm you. But the way that food is served to you, you suspect it. My friend, if you eat that food, even if we take it to the lab and confirm it has nothing harmful to harm you, you will have stomach problems. Because in your mind, you ate food that you are uncomfortable with. And this is where a lot of Kenyans are. Kenyans are simply saying, we are not sure about this. We are uncomfortable about this. And, they don't have to have any scientific reason to be uncomfortable. And this is why we have choices that, people can eat whatever they want to eat. Those who want to eat omena will eat omena. Those who want to eat fish will eat fish. Those who don't want to eat fish will try to get chicken. And those who don't like chicken will get the nyama choma and all those. So we have choices, and consumers decide what to eat. The government cannot decide that today GMOs are okay for you guys to eat. And at the end of the day, even if GMOs come into the country, Jeff, if consumers have not decided that this is something they want to interact with, they will not eat it. It will stay in the shelves, the business will not happen, the transactions will not happen, and no one will make any business from GMOs in this country if consumers have decided with a significant majority that they don't want to eat it.
Dr. Richard Oduor, you'll be first in line to buy that product, won't you?
I will queue immediately. I will buy it very early in the morning, prepare my ugali by 11 a.m. Before noon, I will have enjoyed my GMO maize flour in ugali. And there are reasons why I say so. It's because this technology, we must start, Jeff, I was almost beginning to say, why can't we take this debate to discuss GMO that is coming to Kenya? Because we can't sit here and discuss all the GMOs that are existing in the world. It will be protracted discussion that will never end. At this point in time, if we were to guide this discussion, we would want to say the discussion to go towards the process of saying, look, what are the kind of GMOs that are coming? And you have that gentleman called, Dr. Roy Mugira, is the regulator. And before that consignment gets into this country, he will have to verify. They will have to apply to him, and before it is offloaded. So at that point in time, we need to discuss that container, that this one is already here. It is GM that has got, that is made for, say, BT. Then let's discuss BT. How bad is that to the human health? Then we come back to this bench and we break down the BT and what it does. Because, Jeff, it is so sad that the GMO debate is the only debate that I've seen in the recent past where everybody has an opinion and they have become all of a sudden professionals. You know the drug that you are eating, that we take when we are sick? Inside there, when you lift, a paper is inside there that indicates the side effects, documented, that this one will make you drowsy, it will make acid in your stomach, and whatever, even as you take documented evidence of side effects. We keep discussing GMO with imaginary side effects. I'm waiting for this document where somebody has listed in the GMO maize that this one will make you sleepy, this one will make you have stomachache, because all these things we are throwing around, stomachache, cancer, are unfortunate. You know, I don't know whether people are seeing the real people who are dying in this country because of hunger. You know, there is an African saying that says that the axe forgets, but the tree remembers. What it means is that the real people actually who require food in this country are the ones that are remembering. You know, the axe just went and cut the tree died, and that's why the tree cannot forget about the action from the axe. The debate right now is actually very convenient. I can tell you Emmanuel, and he's a friend, and we talk a lot more, has not gone hungry for the last 1 month. He hasn't, and I haven't too. And therefore, it is very trendy and convenient to sit here and start talking about this GMO as if it is a topical story. The real Kenyans who are suffering, and we are contributing towards this rally campaign to feed fellow Kenyans. It is important that we hear their real voices. It will change this discussion, by the way. And I'm still looking forward to a point where we can take this discussion down there. But talking about public participation, let me just actually comment on that as well. You see, was there public participation when this ban was mounted? Was there? It was in 2012. Were we consulted as the public?
No.
No, and it was because there was a paper by Jules Seralini, a French, publisher, author, who actually popped up with a paper that was saying that they fed GM maize to some, mice that were already predisposed to cancer. The rats that even if you fed them on water, they would still develop tumors anyway. And that was the reason why the paper was retracted. When that paper was withdrawn, countries that also panicked like Kenya did and mounted a ban lifted immediately. That is what a good country does. And that is why I keep saying, by the way, we are bashing this government, but it's the most cautious government that you can ask me. Because that paper was out there, but South Africa never banned. The paper was out there. In the US, they never banned. But Kenya, because of the liking for the public and because of the fact that it's very cautious, and Dr. Muroi told you about the Cartagena Protocol, precautionary principle is one of the most important duties of a government. So when the paper popped up and it was showing cancer with, mice showing some tumor, the government quickly, and we were never consulted, and mounted a ban. For 10 years, we have been here in the corridors trying to talk to government and tell the government, look, the paper was withdrawn 9 years ago. We are losing out as a country. Why can't you allow us, to start experimenting with the kind of, technologies that you have funded us? And what is also interesting that Kenyans don't know is that during all this time, we have been getting funding from the government National Research Fund at Kenyatta University to make GMO maize that is drought tolerant, make GMO cassava that is low level of cyanide. We have been getting funding for the last 10 years.
And you've been growing it?
We have, no, it's in the lab. It has a process. It starts from the lab and it is controlled by the regulator. It goes through the contained, confined, and then it goes to different places. That's what we call national performance trial. But some of the discussions that I hear a lot more, Jeff, and with a lot of respect to the Lordship, the Bishop, because I'm Catholic, and I cannot look at my Bishop on the eye and contradict him because of matters of faith. And I liked the fact that he was also nicely cautious when he said, these are matters that should be discussed openly, and said for or against. That was a fair discussion. I hear a very crazy discussion where people say that actually we are playing God. The GMO is playing God. And sometimes I wonder whether people really know who God is. The moment you are able to compare Richard here to God, just because I moved genes from beans, which naturally exists, and put into maize, which naturally exists and was created by God himself, and you think now, because of that basic transfer, I am now competing, we are in the same WhatsApp group with God. It's trivializing, really, God. And any religious person, and I'm telling them, looking directly into their eyes and telling them, if you think that a mere genetic transformation of taking gene and it happens naturally, and we are using methods that God himself created, and you want to place us with God in the same WhatsApp group, you are really, it's blasphemous. Yeah. It is.
By the way, before I ask another question, I want you to listen to what the politicians have to say.
Oh, yeah.
Our own politicians in Parliament. Mm-hmm. Let's listen to what they had to say. And also the former Prime Minister.
Oh.
Research and tests to find out the consequences. Let us not be blind to innovations, new technology that is coming. So we need to be forward-looking, but let it be tested and approved by our institutions. If it is approved by institutions, then there should be no reason to introduce it into the country.
The president needs no advice from that corner. The time they were given an opportunity to advise the government, this country sunk into a ditch. They have no moral authority to advise on what we need to do to get out of the crisis we are in. If President William Ruto was to get advice from that corner, this country will be in further trouble.
Chemutai Goin, Citizen.
The discussion of importation of GMO was premature, as a report on the maize balance sheet by the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development projects a maize surplus of 19.1 million bags by end of December 2022.
In Europe, Germany, France, Austria, Greece, Hungary, Netherlands, Lithuania, Luxembourg, etc. have rejected GMO.
We cannot be used as guinea pigs for things that we don't know yet and the impact as this country. We are already dealing with a high impact of cases of cancer.
There is no need, when you know that there is a possibility that a substance is poisonous, that then you take a risk of taking it. If we find that certain innovations and science is the solution to some of these problems, Honorable Speaker, we should be bold enough to adopt these changes, Honorable Speaker, and allow our people to enjoy sustainable food security.
It is a specific type of maize which Americans have eaten for 30 years. Are we trying to say that Kenyans have better, they are more specialized than Americans?
Mimi nimuulize Mheshimiwa Waziri Kuria kwamba yeye si mbunge wa Katundu ile ya zamani tena, ni waziri, awache kutoa matamshi ambayo tunaita kwa kizungu reckless, because those are completely reckless statements that can only come from a person who is coming from a bar.
But he needs to be careful with what he makes. Roadside declarations are a thing of the past, and therefore, before he makes any statement, you cannot compare GMO with death. That is really something that you're trying to. What are you telling us?
The path that the minister has taken is very dangerous. Even what they've done right now, we understand the boats are docking. That is illegal.
Dr. Roy Mugira, I don't know if you were listening to those sound bites, but politicians, I'm telling you, they are completely against GMOs for the most part. Dr. Roy? Okay, Emmanuel, let me go to you.
Thank you. I'm coming in, Jeff.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Jeff. I think the sentiments that have been expressed are reflective of what we saw earlier in from other sectors of the public. Like we observed, really, this is as something to do with the expressions that maybe directly reacting to what Waziri said, but generally, like I mentioned earlier, there is a general, not very clear what the GMO we are talking about, what exactly traits we are talking about. But nevertheless, this is again a reflection, like I said, of low levels or not very adequate levels of information. If you could play also a clip that I saw earlier from the Senate, you may realize some differences. But again, I think this is the opinion that is out there that need our attention in terms of public education, public awareness, and possibly the right place to start would be the houses, the houses of parliament, where our representatives sit. Jeff?
Yeah, absolutely. It should. Emmanuel, should people be worried?
Definitely. You know, listening to Professor here, you know, I basically just have to refer to the act which I mentioned. You know, when we say biosafety, because Dr. Mugira leads the National Biosafety Authority, this is how the National Biosafety Act defines it. Means the avoidance of risk to human health and safety and the conservation of the environment as a result of the use of genetically modified organisms. This is the law that establishes the National Biosafety Authority. And therefore, you know, for us to say that it's completely safe, that, you know, the questions that people are asking are irrelevant, it is wrong. And if you look at the objects, I'll just read one so that you get the wording that the law has, so that we also put really, you know, Dr. Mugira, you know, to task to make sure that, you know, these are things that have to be really taken seriously. It's not something that we can quickly brush off and say this is safe. You know, the objects of the Act, for example, to facilitate responsible research and minimize the risks that may be posed by genetically modified organisms. So even the law itself, you know, envisions already that this is something that is not free from risks. We are talking about the fear that people have and the issues, the questions that people are raising. No one has ever raised questions about Katumani maize. No one has ever raised questions about 614 maize that is sold by Kenya Seed, 6213 maize, the hybrid maize that are sold by these other companies. No one has ever raised questions about that. It is not because when people raise questions, it is not because necessarily that they don't know. Some of these people know enough to know what to touch and what not to touch. And we should respect that. I want to just leave it there, that we should respect the fact that people can choose to say, you know, I really don't think this is safe. Professor has his knowledge, he has his work in the laboratory, and it's something that we have to respect. But you see, he is professor, but you know, I am the professor of my stomach. And I'm the professor of what I feed my children. And I'm the professor of what I grow on my farm. So all Kenyans are professors in their own rights. And when someone says, I don't want to grow GMOs, it's not because they are primitive. It's not because they don't think. It's not because they are not exposed. So the questions of saying that the Kenyans who are asking out of ignorance, it's really unfair. An unfair assessment. Some of the people, even some of us like myself, I have a BSc, I've gone through the laboratories, I've studied some of these topics at university. I understand, but I have chosen that I don't want to deal with that. There is nothing funny about these conversations about GMOs. The seeds that they're talking about, professors, you say, is doing research at the JKLive. They have been being funded by government. KU, sorry. How many varieties have they produced through that research? How many varieties have they sold outside Kenya or interested the US, for example? So the maize that is coming into this country has not been researched by Kenyan researchers. It has not. The BT maize that is going to be imported, no Kenyan researcher has been involved. I think people have been involved in the national performance trials. But in the development of the technology, this is not our technology. And this is why we are saying, basically, the people who are asking questions have a right to ask questions, and we need to apply the precautionary principle as it were, so that we are not sitting here. I don't know if Dr. Mugira knew earlier that this maize was coming from Mozambique, or he also saw it in the news like us, because this is what happened 10 years ago when the ban was put in place. 40,000 tons of maize left South Africa. Based on the Cartagena Protocol, which Dr. is referencing, what is supposed to be done is that the country of origin where the consignment is coming is supposed to declare intention to export. And the country where the maize is being received is supposed to declare intention to import. Kenya did not declare. And this is why there was all this war. When they say that the public participation was not done there, it was done. People were in the streets. And that is why the government decided to put the ban. So it's clearly what has been done now, it's clearly something that Kenyans are not happy. And it's not, I'm not saying because I'm not happy myself. Just go anywhere, ask anyone. Yeah. Kenyans are clearly not happy about the rushed decision to lift the ban.
Okay, gentlemen, I'm going to take a quick break, come back. And Professor Richard, I want to ask you a question when I come back. Are you scientists simply talking to yourselves and leaving the rest of us out? Are you at a different level? Is that the problem here? Maybe. Maybe that's part of the problem. Yeah. Professor Richard Emmanuel Atamba, Dr. Richard Mugira, Roy Mugira, out there on Zoom. It's a very interesting conversation, folks. We want your input in it as well. At Koinange Jeff, at Citizen TV Kenya, the hashtag JKLive. JKLive takes a break. We'll be back with the GMO debate in a moment.